And welcome everybody to the 110th episode of the Fact Is podcast. We're your host, Nate Moses.
And I'm Stu Mowbray.
And we are no Ryan tonight. He's got some things he's taking care of, but Stu is jumping in for him tonight, and it'll just be us two going over some fantastic articles talking about this week's news. Stuart, how we doing this week?
Doing good, man. How about you?
Oh, I'm doing great. It's always a great week when you get to sit down and talk about our government and how we get to criticize them. I mean, honestly, when you think about it, it is kind of a beautiful privilege because, not a lot of countries can you actually sit here and speak or at least question and talk about things, right? And you can't do that in a lot of different countries. So we are very grateful for that opportunity.
Yeah, I am thankful for that.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, of course, we criticize a lot and we have a lot to talk about. But I mean, when it comes to like personal accountability, we look towards that for our leaders. But it's also just, again, it's a true blessing to be able to sit here and just be able to question and talk and be able to bring up these conversations. So a beautiful thing we do on this platform that we have availability to. So without further ado, I mean, we have a couple articles, of course. Let's talk about what we're going to be going over. So first, we're going to talk about the U.S. and Germany, how they're sending battle tanks over to Ukraine. So more equipment being sent over to Ukraine. Davos 2023, the key takeaways from the World Economic Forum. We will talk about that. Kevin McCarthy's math problem. So we're talking about the federal budget over the next 10 years and the size of the spending cuts necessary to balance this budget. We'll also talk about FBI official worked for sanctioned Russian oligarchs. So that's great. People who are supposed to be in our intelligence agencies are truly working for Russia. A little sketchy. And there was that whole thing about Trump and all that crap, but then we have somebody in our actual FBI who's doing that. So interesting news there. Last thing we're going to touch up on, Justice Department sues Google for corrupting ad market. So ads out there are being corrupted. I mean, that's an interesting take there. So we'll go over those facts and we'll talk about all this tonight. So Stuart, do you have anything else you want to say before we get started?
Forget they found documents in Mike Pence's
house. That's right. Let's talk about this. So to anybody who hasn't heard, there are more classified documents, hence the title of our episode tonight, 110. Mike Pence now has been found with documents in his home as well. So on top of Biden, on top of Trump, now we have Mike Pence, vice president. So not too shocking if I'm being honest. At this point, it's like, oh, next Kamala Harris, and then Obama, and then all the previous presidents. So it's not like, I don't know. I mean, I just don't know what to take of it. Like, should it be a big deal? Should it not be a big deal? What do we say about that?
I guess it depends what's in it, in the document.
I mean, ultimately, I feel like that's what's most important. So, how sensitive that information is.
Also, too, probably things are overclassified in D.C.
Yeah, I could agree with that.
So it could be like the dumbest paper that could be classified. But what's interesting is that vice presidents can't classify stuff, but Mike Pence and Joe Biden both had documents.
That is kind of interesting. And weren't Biden's even dated back to when he was a VP?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought so. That's really interesting. So we'll have to...
they can't classify stuff and they can't declassify stuff.
So while we're talking about that, because I need to fix something on my phone over there with TikTok, let's hear, Stu. Let me hear your opinion on...
Oh, no.
You're just going to have to rant for like a quick minute here. So let me hear your opinion on this, though. Do you think... because regardless, they're all put as classified documents, right? They are top secret documents. Do you think all members who have documents found in their house should be held accountable? Or, I mean, do you truly think it's going to be a situational basis?
Definitely situational. It's definitely what the documents contain.
Right. I guess the other question is, what does a classified... What does it... Like, what is guidelines?
You can classify anything. The president can classify anything.
So it's just...
I'm not sure. Not sure.
Now that I got that fixed. All right, well,
TikTok.
Yeah, we had to fix TikTok, make sure we had all of our peoples there. So, without further ado, let's jump straight into our articles, and we'll jump straight into what we got for the night. So, U.S. and Germany send battle tanks over to Ukraine. The U.S. and Germany separately announced on Wednesday they would send battle tanks to Ukraine after pressure from NATO allies and Ukraine to supply the advanced armored vehicles as Kyiv prepares for a possible new Russian offensive. So why does this matter? The U.S. decision to supply Abraham M1 tanks and the Germans announced on the Leopard 2 tanks is a major boost for Ukraine, which has pleaded with the West for months to send more advanced weaponry as it tries to take back territory from Russia. The U.S. will send 31 Abrams tanks to Ukraine and will begin training Ukrainian troops on sustaining the tanks as soon as possible. Biden said at a press conference on Wednesday. Biden cautioned the delivery of the tanks would take time. Biden said prior to the announcement, he had spoken with leaders of France, Germany, Italy, and the UK to continue our close coordination and full support of Ukraine. During a press briefing Wednesday afternoon, National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby called the Abrams tanks the most capable, powerful tank in the world and said it would help Ukraine fight effectively on open terrain. Kirby noted that no date has been set for the Abrams delivery, but that it would likely be many months before they're actually there. Germany will initially supply 14 Leopard 2 tanks from its own stock, as well as ammunition and logistical and maintenance support, the government said in a statement. Training Ukrainian forces on the Leopards is expected to begin soon. Germany will also quickly provide license to other European countries that wish to supply Leopards from their own stock, the statement added. Poland has already requested approval to send some of its Leopards to Ukraine. The goal, the German government said, was for Germany and its allies to supply 2 battalions with Leopards, and which would be a total of 88 tanks, which is good because, I mean, the U.S. has already supplied so much money there. The debate among Western allies, particularly between the U.S. and Germany over sending tanks to Ukraine, has escalated over the last week. Biden administration argued in recent days against sending Abrams, citing logistical issues. Instead, U.S. officials said send German Leopard 2 tanks would be more beneficial since many European allies already have them and they're easier to maintain. The M1 Abrams is a complex weapon system that is challenging to maintain. That was true yesterday. That is true today and will be true in the future. Pentagon spokesperson Brig General Pat Ryder, Brigadier General, told reporters on Tuesday. Until Wednesday, Schultz had expressed reluctance to send Leopards, fearing it could escalate tensions with Moscow. German officials also reportedly privately linked its own commitment to providing its tanks to the U.S. decision to send Abrams as well. Abrahams. Publicly, however, U.S. and German officials denied any link between the two decisions. Germany didn't force me to change my mind, Biden said Wednesday, adding that the countries were waiting to act together. We're just going to kind of keep it at that. But so we're looking to send even more supplies over to Ukraine. What are your thoughts on this, Stuart? I mean, how much more are we actually going to send to Ukraine? I mean, I don't understand how much more we can continue to afford.
I don't see any peace deals, do you?
I mean, I don't see anything about peace deals going on in Ukraine. I don't see anything about the Zelensky and Putin try to come together to try to make any peace. But I mean, again, how much more can we continue to send? How much more of our supplies are we going to continue to put forward? And you know, I look at NATO, and I'm very glad that now other countries are stepping up with more. You know, especially 88 tanks. That's a pretty big commitment, over double what we're sending. But still, when you look at the money we've sent over there and that kind of assets we've put over there, it's a pretty sizable difference between us and NATO in general.
I don't know, man. It's only getting worse, it seems.
So, again, when we come to this situation, you know, and I can't remember the exact number, but I believe we're somewhere over $100 billion to Ukraine, correct?
Over $100 billion.
Over $100 billion, yeah. So I mean, well over $100 billion. We're sending 33 of our own Abram tanks, I think is what it said, 33, and then you know, other countries within NATO are sending a total of 88 tanks, which is good.
Definitely looks like it's escalating into something else.
Right, and I don't know the exact number of what. I don't know the exact number of what other NATO allies have sent them money-wise, but I can tell you we are well over $100 billion, and that's a sizable amount of money. I mean, that is huge. You know, especially if it's going all towards wartime manufacturing as of right now, whether it be ammunition, weapons, whatever, just weapons for war. You know, it's not like they're using it to build their infrastructure. That's the other crazy part that we haven't even considered. How much are we going to send to them after all this, saying, hey, we're going to help them with their infrastructure? Like, I'm all about volunteering maybe the manpower, but how much more money can we really go? Because as we're about to talk about a little bit later, we are at our debt ceiling. Like, we are at the debt ceiling, and we're about to discuss that here in a little bit.
We've been there forever.
I mean, yeah, we've been there for a very long time, but either way.
But war makes it worse.
So Wendy comes in. How you doing, Wendy? Hope you're doing well. Our border's wide open, but we provide for another country. Take care of the Ukraine, but not USA. It's your tax dollars that you're using. Do you want your dollars protecting the country you live in, or 5,000 miles away from while your decays? So here's the thing. I know it's a little bit off topic, but if we're going to the border situation, that's a whole different set of issues there. We do have border issues, but at the same time, I would say our immigration is probably, not nearly as big of an issue as what we need to worry about in the U.S. in general. I mean, we have starving children. We're supposed to be a first world country. I don't believe any first world country should have children that are starving. We have homeless veterans. We have so many other things I feel like we could worry about because when it comes to immigration, I know there's a big conversation to be had with that. But I would also argue that a lot of our workforce is also filled with immigrants. And I mean, I would argue in general, immigrants, I mean, we're all immigrants, unless you have some sort of Native American history and you are an immigrant here to the U.S. So that's just a fact. But, the border discussion is something a little bit more that we could discuss. Probably not on tonight's episode because we have a little bit more to talk about. I think we talked about the border a little bit more last week, where they were planning on trying to bring in more immigrants, but they could barely handle what they were doing on a day-to-day basis. I think it was going to go from like 3,000 to 9,000 or something of that nature, or 9 to 15. I can't remember those numbers to be off the top of my head, but yeah. defending the borders of Ukraine or defending Ukraine. I mean, again, I'm all for containing communism. I do believe that we need to not allow Russia to have all of its influence, because ultimately this will prove as a bigger asset for the U.S. if we help Ukraine. But I also struggle because, I don't want to spend too much money. I mean, there's got to be a point of accountability, and there's got to be a point where we're reinvesting back into the U.S., whether it be with our borders or with our children or our education or, what our infrastructure, whatever it may be. So, that's kind of where I stay with that. Any thoughts on that, Stu?
I definitely don't want my tax dollars going to war.
Yeah, no, and I agree with that, right? I wouldn't even want our tax dollars going to war if we were in a war, because I'm tired of war, right? Like, at some point, we just need to kind of learn as citizens or human beings just to get along with each other. But that's obviously a discussion outside of all this as well. So, yeah. But anyways, sending lots of tanks, lots of help towards Ukraine, and we've already sent plenty of money. So just wanted to throw those facts out there and letting people kind of come up with what they think is right or wrong, because, again, that is a lot of money going towards Ukraine. So any kind of closing thoughts on that, Stuart, or anything else you want to say on that?
The war machine keeps turning, my brother.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. And I don't see anytime soon where it's going to stop. So fun. Love it. Love war. Obviously, that was me being sarcastic, but leave it up to some people out there to judge.
Sorry, we got you recorded.
Yeah, all over the internet now. Fantastic. Well, good thoughts there, Wendy. Thank you for your thoughts. I do, agree that I don't want my tax dollars going towards that. I'd rather have those tax dollars back in my pocket, so I can, enjoy and influence our U.S. economy a little bit more than leaving it to, leaving even more money over there in Ukraine. No problems helping, but I think we've gone way past the point of helping at this point. So let's move forward. Let's talk about the Davos 2023 key takeaways from the World Economic Forum. So Davos, Switzerland, on January 20th, global leaders and business executives departed a freezing World Economic Forum meeting on Friday after a frank exchange of views over how the world will tackle its biggest issues in 2023. Here's what we learned. The economy. So gloom and doom heading in Davos turned into cautious optimism by the end with global economic outlook for the year ahead looking better than feared. But the WEF's annual meeting was filled with a discussion of plenty of risk, including inflationatory pressures from China's reopening and rising debt distress in the developing world. Not to mention that the hardest bit for Western nations is yet to come, getting inflation down to 2%. Things are not great, but they are much better than what they could have been. Daniel Pinto, JP Morgan's president and chief operating officer. Ukraine for Ukraine's allies. Davos was all about doubling down on better weapons and financial support for Kyiv to defend itself against Russia. Outside the West, though, fears of an economic downturn highlighted global divisions as some delegates encouraged a quick return to the negotiating table. I think everybody's kind of wanting negotiations. It's just kind of on Russia and Ukraine to sit down and do that. This week, listening to the politicians, I was surprised in a way because I got the feeling that no one really knows exactly where we are heading and what the solutions can be. Tanja Fajon-Slovina, Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister. If we want a negotiated, peaceful solution tomorrow, we need to provide more weapons today. NATO Secret General Jens Stoltenberg says, what? Does that even make sense? Trade. So be careful of friendshoring, warned the WTO's Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala as the big three trading powers, U.S., Europe, and China, push their new industrial policies. What was not clear was how the rest of the world fits in the new trade policies that protect workers and redefine supply chains. Well, I would say China's not very good at protecting their workers, but that's just my opinion. This becomes a rich country game, right? We can subsidize this, we can subsidize that. What about the poor countries who have limited fiscal room? They get left out in the cold. said former governor of the Reserve Bank of India. His name was Rajaram Rajan. Apologies for butchering these names because I just know I am. Climate, the carbon crowd received a warm reception as the renewable industry rubbed shoulders with the big oil executives. Awash with cash after a year of high oil prices, fossil fuel producers have the firepower to invest in green energy, but efforts on CEO green pledges and climate financing appeared sluggish. On the outside, I don't even care about Greta Thunberg and all that. So we're not going over that. Tech, Davos juxtaposed the industry. I don't even know what these words are. Juxtaposed the industry's potential in peril as Microsoft Corp CEO and Silicon Valley executives touted artificial intelligence such as ChatGPT transform their businesses. They announced layoffs of tens of thousands of employees globally. Scrutiny of once high-flying cloud spending by businesses was the forefront. So we're just going to kind of leave it at that. That is a little concerning, especially, I don't know if you've seen, but have you seen all the layoffs that have been happening amongst Google, Spotify, Microsoft, all those big tech companies? Have you been seeing that, Stuart?
Yep, and I know why.
Why is that?
Well, when we had the pandemic and everybody was shutting down, there was a lot more people in technology. All these technology companies hired a lot more people.
Right. Keep up with it.
Now that everything's kind of calmed down, laying them off.
Interesting. And, there have been people that have been getting laid off that are, 10, 11 years into the company and they're still getting laid off. I mean, that's just heartbreaking, And I think it's pretty crazy that a company can do that. They can just go, hey, thanks for all your 10 years and we're going to have to lay you off now because we need to keep our money. And it's like, holy crap, did you not just consider what you did to that entire person's life? You didn't even give them like any kind of severance package. You didn't give them a heads up. You didn't even it's just the day of, hey, good luck. It's not, hey, you have a month to find another career. At least. Considering what that's going to do to that person, man, that's the scary thing about big tech or big companies in general. Companies are able to do that stuff. They're able to just look at you and be like, hey, you're laid off. Sorry about your luck. Sorry that you devoted 10 years of your life to helping our company become strong and better. And, you did all this stuff for us. But ultimately, I apologize. You are getting laid off and you need to go find another job. We're not going to give you any kind of notice. We're not going to. But yet they expect a 2 weeks notice from us whenever we leave their job, right? We at least give it 2 weeks. But they're not even willing to talk to these people and say, hey, here's a severance package. I know a couple of people who have actually gotten laid off, and I feel bad for them because it literally is like the day of thing. You go into work and they say, hey, guys, sorry. Unfortunately, we don't have the work for you. You're going to have to go home and, you're as of right now, you're laid off. No benefits, no pay, no nothing. So good luck. I mean, that is horrifying for some people. So, it's a scary time in our world. Davos touched up on a lot. I totally disagree with if we want more peace, we need more weapons. That was like the dumbest thing I think I've ever heard in my life. But again, that's more opinionated than what they factually said. So trying to leave it towards the facts. I mean, that was what was said. But that's kind of to wrap up Davos and the World Economic Forum. Do you have any other touching points on that one, Stuart? Any thoughts on that?
It's just odd to me that all these rich people get together, try to decide how other people are.
It is really interesting to see how government officials, business officials, it's like CEOs and everything get together and they discuss that, isn't it? Why would the government and business be getting together
politicians and big business.
Yeah, and it's discussing how people are gonna, formulate their lives and how the economy's going to go and what they predict and things like that.
Do you think they're trying to solve the world's issues or they're trying to make money?
Well, I mean, pretty clear what my answer is, what I personally think. But I mean, here's the facts, is that we know big business and politicians are going together and having discussions about how our lives are going to be for the next couple of years. Here's my opinion. I mean, all they want is a profit, right? Because that's I mean, okay, again, when you look, and I was listening to Rogan's podcast with Portnoy today. When you look at like advertising on TV, 70 to 80% of those advertisements are paid by some sort of pharmaceutical company. When you are going online and you're looking at Twitter feeds, 80% of those Twitter comments are from bots, not even real humans. So like when you're looking at those statistics and you're hearing that, you really question what kind of world we live in today. I mean, when you really put that in perspective, I want y'all to hear those statistics again. 70% of the advertisements you see on TV are coming from big pharma. And again, 80%, 80 to 90% of those Twitter feeds that you see out there are bots. I want people to really truly conceptualize this and think about what kind of world we're living in when bots are running your social media and big pharmaceutical companies who make a profit off of you being on their medication. 70% of the advertisements out there are from them. So let's just think about that for a minute. It's a good educational discussion. It's a good talking point. But that's where I leave that.
Just cracks me up. Like, who do they think they are?
But I mean, who do they think they are? Who are we allowing them to be? Who's giving them that value? Who's allowing them to do what they do? The American people. So it will forever be our fault until we actually start to hold people accountable.
I wonder who pays for that.
That's a great question. And you know what's funny is, like, it's in Switzerland. The whole Davos meeting. Yeah, I mean, Switzerland is like supposed to be the most, and I will give Switzerland this: they have been like the most neutral country, I think, almost of all time. But it's just crazy that they're allowing these people to kind of again, big business, big politicians to come together and talk. I mean, you got NATO there, presidents of countries, prime ministers, again, CEOs. Like, why are that many powerful people in one big room? That's just crazy to me. Anyways, anything else there, Stu? We good?
I hope they save the world.
Let's hope they actually have those intentions in mind. Let's hope they do save the world. Moving forward, though, let's talk about Kevin McCarthy's math problem. So, size spending cuts necessary to balance the federal budget over the next 10 years. So, all programs included in the cuts, we would need a 26% cut, excluding defense and veterans at 33%, excluding defense, veterans, and Social Security, 51%, excluding defense, veterans, Social Security, and Medicare, that's 85%. 85% of it. Negotiations to raise the country's debt ceiling will likely put Republicans in a vice. Torn among competing conservative pressures, the inevitable need to work with Democrats and the realities of the basic budgetary math. There we go. The big picture. So fiscal conservatives want to balance the federal budget. Former President Trump has warned his party to leave Medicare and Social Security untouched. It's basically impossible to do both. In every way, House Republicans could try to square the circle comes with political risk. House Republicans have said they'll refuse to raise the debt ceiling unless it's accompanied by reductions in federal spending, but the party appears to be deeply divided as to what programs should be on the chopping block. Former President Trump warned against Medicare or Social Security cuts, urging Republicans to instead cut waste, fraud, and abuse everywhere that we can find it, and there's plenty of it. There's plenty of it. I mean, no offense, Trump, but look at your own income taxes before you talk to anybody else. I don't want to hear it. But do not cut the benefits our seniors worked for and paid for their entire lives. Save Social Security, don't destroy it, he said in a video message posted to True Social. Again, if we're going to talk about anybody paying their taxes correctly, Trump is one of those individuals we can point towards, as well as many politicians out there, I'm sure, that do not pay their income taxes, not just limited to Trump. Reality check. If you take off the table cuts to Medicare, Social Security, veterans, and defense spending, if you're also not going to raise taxes to bring in more revenue, you need to cut about 85% of the rest of the budget in order to make it balance, according to the recent analysis by a committee of responsible federal budget. The numbers can't work, said Chris Campbell, a former Treasury official and GOP Finance Committee aide. That sets up a scenario in which either moderates or conservative will have to cave in order to pass anything just through the House, never mind getting it through Democrat-controlled Senate and White House. Conservatives have said they secured a commitment from the House Speaker Kevin McCarthy to create a budget that balances over the next decade, an exercise that would likely precede a vote on the debt limit. McCarthy reportedly agreed to freeze discretionary spending at 2022 levels, which has already rankled rankled. It might be a misspelling there. Some GOP members who worry that would effectively mean less Pentagon's funding. Some conservatives have said defense cuts weren't part of the deal. Republicans could theoretically get to 2022 spending levels just through non-defense spending cuts. And I just want to bring this into perspective. 1% of a budget cut for the industrial military complex is $40 billion. I just want to keep that in everybody's mind quick. The looming question is which cuts included in the budget would then be included in the House Republicans' debt limit demands. So where do we sit with budget cuts? Stu, what are your thoughts on this? I don't know how you feel about budget cuts or where your thoughts are on this.
I don't know. A lot of this kind of goes over my head because they make it
Yeah, I mean, I feel like they do try to make it more confusing than anything. Because let's discuss the accountability of the money in the first place. Now, I'm assuming all of this gets audited. Now, this is just an assumption, right? Because we get audited, everybody else in the world gets audited. Why would our own federal government not get audited, right? That's the thought.
Pentagon's never passed an audit.
Pentagon's never passed an audit. So, problem is, if they're not able to handle this money, how do you bring it down to a scale that is easy and controllable? Well, you bring it down to a state level. Each state will spend what they need on their own. Excuse me. Oh, I just sneezed there. All right. Sorry. So each, like, when you bring, okay, so like if it's not a scalable level with the federal government, then you need to bring this down to a scalable level, which would be, again, at the state level. So if you kind of eliminated the need for federal income tax, which is the majority of our paychecks getting taken away from us, you eliminate the need for as much federal money going out and you keep it more within the state, then you can actually balance what you do, because we already pay taxes to our towns, our cities, our counties, our state, and the federal government. I want you to think that's 5 different entities that we have to pay our taxes towards. Not to mention, on top of the federal government, we are also paying for Social Security and Medicare on the side. Like, that's a whole separate one that we're paying to, right? It's not like when you look at your checks and you're looking at the 4 different categories, they're taken 2 are state, 2 are federal, and they, you know, where they go, you'd have to do your research on that aspect. But I want you all to think about how much of our money is getting taken away from us. And they're already not being held accountable for it. So if it's not at a scalable level where they can pass an audit and we can actually understand where our money is going, then you have to bring it back down to a scalable size, which again would be within that state. Like, even if you had to, you know, I don't know how that looks. It is above my head as well. I mean, that would be something where we'd have to sit down and discuss with some of the world, again, like state leaders, country leaders, and talk about that, what that would look like. I mean, from my understanding, it would just be, it goes to a single, you know, like our taxes go to a single area within your state or the federal government, and from there you distribute them accordingly, right, as your leaders vote upon. I mean, to me, it shouldn't be that difficult, and it sounds kind of easier being said than done, but that, I don't see it being much more difficult than that, right? Like, yeah, it takes a lot of logistics, it takes time, it takes conversation. That's why we work 8-hour days, Monday through Friday. That's why we have time towards that. That's what our leaders are supposed to do. That's what they're there for. But no, we let them spend the majority of their time campaigning for themselves, trying to gloat as to why they need to be up there when they're not even doing anything beneficial for us in the first place. But again, just my theory. Stuart, anything else from you?
I don't know. They created this big old mess, and now messes any floor falls through.
Yeah.
People are so dependent on government programs and
what was who was it that made the famous quote? It was some of the scariest words you can hear. I'm from the government and I'm here to save you. Reagan, I believe. Ronald Reagan stood up there and said, you know, some like the 9 worst words you can hear is I'm from the government and I'm here to help. Yes, I'm here to help. So that's a very concerning thing, because the government does want to just give everybody help, and that's not the way it needs to go about. We need to have people that are held accountable on their own self-sustaining lives, you know, but that's just my opinion there. So
there's just always this drama around these situations.
Right.
Debt ceiling. Remember the omnibus bill?
Yep. It just doesn't stop.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it just feels like it
And they know these deadlines are coming up.
Yeah, it just feels like it goes from one thing to another, and our leaders are choosing not to deal with it. I mean, it feels like they're just kind of pushing it away further and further, and they're not really worried about us or, what's going to happen. So, concerning issues. I mean, again, something that we got to start considering.
My own opinion is I think a lot needs to be cut in this country.
I agree with that.
Like I said earlier, cut all these things. It hurts a lot of people because that's just what this country's built over the past couple years.
Right. So, I mean, I guess when you look at it from that perspective, it's going to get worse before it gets better. But unfortunately, that's the way it's going to have to go.
Yeah, when you make that change, things are going to get worse before.
Yeah. And it's just something we're going to have to accept and eventually end up doing. But as of right now, I don't know if that's the time or how we're going to go about that. I don't know if we have the proper leaders in place to be able to even do that. That's the other scary part. So I don't know. We'll keep touching up on that, of course. And like I said, the facts of the matter are, though, that we got a lot of cutting to do. We got a lot we got to do if we're going to get our country back on track and to make sure we're under our debt ceiling. So we'll see how that goes. But even better, let's talk about how ex-FBI officials are working for sanctioned Russian oligarch, or at least one that we know of as of right now. I'm sure there are plenty more. Former FBI official Charles McGonigal, who led the agency's counterintelligence division in New York, exits Manhattan federal court after being arrested on charges for violating U.S. sanctions on Russia in New York. Here's a couple pictures of him. That's what he looks like. Got one a good picture of him? There he is. All right.
So handsome.
A former top FBI official was charged on Monday with working for sanctioned Russian oligarch Olga Deripaska. U.S. prosecutors ramp up efforts to enforce sanctions on Russian officials and police their alleged enablers. Charles McGonigal, who led the FBI's counterintelligence division in New York before retiring in 2018, pleaded not guilty to 4 criminal counts, including sanctions violations, and money laundering at a hearing in Manhattan federal court. He was released on a $500,000 bond following his arrest over the weekend. The dude trafficked money. Of course he's going to have $500,000 to release him on bond. That's easy. Prosecutors said McGonigal, age 54, in 2021 received concealed payments from Deripaska, who was sanctioned in 2018 in exchange for investigating a rival oligarch. McGonigal was also charged with unsuccessfully pushing in 2019 to lift sanctions against Deripaska. Sanctions must be enforced equally against all U.S. citizens in order to be successful. FBI Assistant Director in charge Michael Driscoll said in a statement, "There are no exceptions for anyone, including a former FBI official." Separately, on Monday, federal prosecutors in Washington and McGonigal received $225,000 in cash from a former member of Albania's intelligence service who had been a source in an investigation in foreign political lobbying that McGonigal was supervising. So there's half of his bond right there, just from one payment. He faces 9 counts in the that case, including making false statements to conceal from the FBI the nature of his relationship with a person. This is obviously a distressing day for him and his family. The defendant's lawyer, Seth Ducharme, told reporters after the Manhattan hearing, "We'll review the evidence, we'll closely scrutinize it, and we'll have a lot of confidence in him." Deripaska, the founder of Russian aluminum company Rusal, was among 24 Russian oligarchs and government officials blacklisted by Washington in 2018 in reaction to Russia's alleged meddling in 2016 U.S. election. It was just, and right here it says alleged. Okay, there was no, nobody was actually found guilty of it. He and the Kremlin have denied any election interference. Also charged in the Manhattan case was Sergei Shestakov, a former Soviet diplomat who later became an American citizen and Russian language interpreter for U.S. courts and government agencies. Prosecutors said Shestakov, he worked with McGonigal to help Deripaska. Good Lord. And made false statements to investigators. Shestakov pleaded not guilty on Monday and was released on a $200,000 bond. See, this money is nothing for them. Like, it's easy for them to come up with. For a normal U.S. citizen, it's, like, kind of hard. The enforcement of sanctions are part of the U.S. efforts to pressure Moscow to stop its war in Ukraine, which the Kremlin calls a special military operation. Deripaska was released last September with violating and the sanctions against him by arranging to have his children born in the United States. The following month, British businessman Graham Bonham Carter was charged with conspiring to violate sanctions to try to move Deripaska's artwork out of the United States. So. There's that. So a lot of names that were hard to say and a lot of controversy about what they were doing. Wow. I mean, an FBI agent working with, that many... An FBI agent working with that many questionable individuals with Russia. I mean...
Shame on you, sir.
Yeah, like, what...
He's doing it. Who else is doing it?
And how deep are they? And how easily are they not getting found out? Or like how easily are they able to
these
conceal
classified documents, but all these ex-FBI, ex-CIA, they have all this classified information.
Yeah, and they have readily available information, not just paperwork that is probably outdated to begin with anyways. That is considered classified. Oh, President Biden changed his password last week. That's classified information. I don't know, but you get what I'm saying. Like that. I don't know. This is very concerning. I mean, again, we're having individuals who are supposed to be part of the United States government that are now colluding with other governments that are literally waging war on people, and we're allowing it. Just like we're allowing trade. Like, why do we even have trade options with China when they don't even know how to treat an individual? They're slaughtering people. They're literally creating a second Holocaust over there, and we're still trading with them, and they're still our biggest importer. Those are the questions that we need to be asking. At what point do we hold people accountable, and to what point do we continue to worry about the world when the U.S. needs to get their own crap in line first? But
I'm pretty sure this agent on the team investigating Trump.
He was on the team of individuals that was investigating Trump with the whole 2016 election scandal, saying that Russia was involved in our elections, yada, yada, whatever. But yet you were literally working with Russia the entire time during that. I think he should not have been let out on bond. I don't know why we would allow somebody like that out on bond to be able to get away, or to be able to just, be out, like to find ways to clear their name or do whatever. I think he should be held in prison. I don't think there's any reason at all he should be able to leave. Because again, he literally just went against the U.S. for years.
You charge him with
treason. Oh, at the highest degree, and you are arrested and you don't get out. You think they would have given Snowden a chance to escape had they put him in prison?
Snowden doesn't have classified documents either.
No, he was just letting the people know that, hey, you're being watched. But do you think that they would even imagine putting a bond up for Snowden? No. Of course they wouldn't have. Not even close. But yet this individual gets to walk out scot-free. Again, what is $500,000 when your most recent deal, you just made $225,000 on one payment? What's $500,000 when you've been doing that for years and you're at the age of 50? Come on now. This is just disgusting. It's like common sense, It shouldn't be this easy to get away with stuff. But it is, unfortunately. So
we'll wait for more facts to come.
out. We'll continue to follow up on that. Anything else on that one, Stu? Beautiful. No, just kind of laid out there. I mean, that's the unfortunate part about all this. It's just facts, and it's all laid out there.
Think about all those other departments that have those kind of people working for them.
Yep. Think about that. All right, last topic for the night. Justice Department sues Google for corrupting ad market. All right, the Justice Department in 8 states on Tuesday filed an antitrust lawsuit against Google's parent company, Alphabet, accusing the tech giant of illegally abusing its dominance in the digital advertising and violating the Sherman Antitrust Act. Why does it matter? It's the second major antitrust lawsuit filed against Google by the Justice Department in the last 3 years, and if successful, it could force Google to sell off much of its ad business. The DOJ and a coalition of state attorneys general sued Google in 2020 for allegedly using anti-competitive tactics to illegally monopolize the online search and search advertising markets. That lawsuit is still ongoing. Good. I'm glad they're being held accountable. Details. So the competition in the ad tech space is broken for reasons that were neither accidental nor inevitable. The filing reads, one industry behemoth, Google, has corrupted legitimate competition in the ad tech industry by engaging in systematic campaign to seize control of the wide swath of high-tech tools used by publishers, advertisers, and brokers to facilitate digital advertising. Bloomberg reported Monday that the lawsuit was imminent. The suit was seeking a judgment that Google was unlawfully monopolized both the publisher ad server market and the advertiser ad network in the U.S. and acted unlawfully by tying products together. So what they're saying, so today's lawsuit from the DOJ attempts to pick winners and losers in the highly competitive advertising technology sector. It largely duplicates an unfounded lawsuit by the Texas Attorney General, much of which was recently dismissed by a federal court. DOJ is doubling down on a flawed argument that would slow innovation, raise advertising fees, and make it harder for thousands of small businesses and publishers to grow. So Google is already under heavy antitrust scrutiny around the world and faces anger from U.S. lawmakers on both sides of the aisle. The case is also a major test for President Joe Biden's antitrust officials, who have been vocal about wanting to rein in the power of dominance of big tech companies. Google earned $209 billion in ad revenue in 2021, making it the largest advertising company in the world. By comparison, Meta, the second largest company globally, made around $115 billion, so basically doubled in ad revenue that same year. The vast majority of Google's revenue, 81% in 2021, comes from advertising. Last year, Google's ad business took a hit thanks to the economic headwinds impacting the growth of the global ad market. The company will report in full-year earnings report next week. It's still expected to bring in more than $200 billion in ad revenue for the full year. Google's advertising dominance stems in part from a handful of ad tech acquisitions. The regulators argue have given it a leg up on ad serving over its competitors. In 2007, it purchased DoubleClick, an ad serving company, for $3.1 billion, giving it access to a vast online marketplace where Google could sell display ads to place on the website of thousands of online publishers. In 2010, it acquired AdMob, a mobile ad network, for another $750 million in stock, allowing Google to plant a flag in the quickly growing mobile ad business that grew with the iPhone market. So, just a quick flashback. Google has been hit with numerous antitrust penalties over the past 5 years in the U.S. and Europe, worth many billions of dollars. It has also paid hundreds of millions in data privacy settlements in the U.S. 2017, European antitrust officials charged Google $2.7 billion fine for $2.7 billion fine for abusing its search practices, more than double what was expected. 2018, European antitrust officials again charged Google $4.1 billion in euros for abusing the dominance of Android. The penalty was upheld, although slightly reduced last year after Google tried to appeal the ruling. 2019, European antitrust officials charged Google $1.7 billion for abusing its advertising dominance. 2020, the U.S. DOJ and state attorneys general sued Google over its search dominance. So let's talk about that. I mean, that's pretty big right there. You have to consider, as like small businesses, when they went to advertise, if Google was making it harder for them. I mean, just like Twitter, do conservatives get any kind of like compensation for being suppressed? Are these small businesses that advertise on Google, are they going to be getting any kind of compensation for being suppressed by Google? Where do we draw that line? Where do we give back to the communities that were really held down by this? The amount of businesses that failed, or people that could have become bigger had they just been given that same opportunity of advertising. What do you think?
I guess you can't say that DOJ is tough on tech.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give them that, right? They're being pretty tough on big tech. I'm happy with that because
Europe seems to go harder on them. 2017, 2018, 2019.
and 2020. Yeah. So I mean,
2020
well, no,
was
2020
US.
was US, yeah, US DOJ. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty crazy to think that.
They obviously haven't learned their lesson.
I mean, at what point do you start holding them accountable? Like true accountability, because right now they're just getting away with it. They're still doing it.
I guess now they have to set ad revenue.
Potentially. That's not confirmed yet, so we'll have to see what happens there. But ad business. So, I mean, yeah, that's a pretty significant issue there. To what degree are we going to hold them accountable? To what degree are we going to ensure that Google doesn't continue to get away with things?
Yeah, like with Google and Twitter, now that we know, like, for facts,
Yeah.
all that stuff that's come out about them. I mean, what about these other big tech companies?
Yep. Yeah, and that's the other thing. Like, we're just hitting the surface. If we're just figuring out about Google and Twitter,
It's nothing
Facebook
that, like,
and
surprises
Instagram.
anybody. Like,
Yeah.
does this surprise you?
No, not at all.
It surprised me that the DOJ is going after them, if I'm
Yeah.
honest.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we're actually having accountability in our own government, departments, which is
Does it
awesome.
surprise me that Google has been doing this for years?
No. And then because that's the big thing. Facebook and Instagram are tied to Meta, so
Yeah.
I can imagine what Facebook and Instagram is going to come out with. What do those ads look like there? Is it worth putting your actual marketing into ad revenue on social media anymore? Because if you say the wrong thing, they're just going to suppress you. So you're going to waste your money. So I don't know where the right answer is there. I don't know where the accountability lies and who gets that proper amount of, I guess,
I'd be pretty mad
help.
if I spent money to have my ad ran and
If I'm a small business and I ran like $100,000 worth of ads and I got little to no like reciprocated value in my company, and then I'm reading something like this, I'm questioning, was I one of those individuals that was held back? And most people be like, oh, you're just a small business. But that's the problem. They're linking big companies. They're taking big tech and they're connecting with other big tech. They're connecting with things that will benefit them mostly to do that. So they're taking away small competition. I mean, we've already seen what happened with COVID when everything got shut down. Who got to stay open? Walmart, Target, big corporations.
it just shows you how much of a monopoly they do have.
Yeah.
Because, like, if you go to a business down the road and you constantly go to that business and they give you bad customer service, let's say the product sucks, you're not going to keep going back there, are you?
You're done.
No, but these big tech companies, we're almost forced to go back. If you need a computer to work or...
Yep.
Yeah, everybody uses Google.
Everybody uses Google.
I know there's Bing and DuckDuckGo.
How many people really use that? I mean, I personally.
Vast majority use Google.
Yeah, I mean, I personally use DuckDuckGo. I love it, but that's just
It's
my
like
personal
these
preference.
big tech companies, they can just keep, scamming people.
Yeah.
People keep using their product.
Yeah. Continue to use it. I mean, when you're that big of a superpower, how do you stop? When you're influencing that many people, how do you stop? You don't. It's really close. It's really, really hard to do. So that's kind of where that lies. Any more thoughts on that, Stuart?
I don't trust big tech.
Who does? I mean, seriously,
There's no way around it all.
how can you? I mean, but yeah,
you
there
just
is.
shut it all off.
I mean, you look at Twitter, you look at all these people that are getting thrown out under the bus, or I say thrown under the bus, that are getting shown their true colors. Exposed. That's a good way of putting it. Yeah. And at this point, it's like, how do we draw these lines? Where do we go with it? What do we do? I don't know. I don't know anymore. I'm lost. This is way over my head.
At least this stayed within Google and like FBI wasn't reaching out to them. I mean, who knows if they do?
Who knows?
But
Who knows?
they're reaching out to Twitter. You got to assume they're reaching out to other companies.
FBI or if they're reaching out to Twitter, I'd assume they're reaching out to Google. They're at Microsoft even.
Zuckerberg has said they reached out to Facebook.
Facebook.
He has said that.
Saw that podcast episode with Joe Rogan. And he was kind of forced to. Huh?
He's admitted to that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he had to, and he blatantly threw it out there. So good on him for that part, right? But again, you look at these social medias and what they're doing, and then like you look at TikTok, we can't even control TikTok.
And we know, I mean,
talking to you,
Google owns YouTube.
YouTube.
So we know they demonetize and take people's stuff down all the time.
Just go back to the 2020 election when Kamala Harris got absolutely flattened by Tulsi Gabbard, and the very next day during the gubernatorial Democratic conference, very next day Tulsi Gabbard's team experienced they all got kicked out and temporarily suspended from their accounts. She was the number one most Googled person after that night. They suspended all of her accounts and everything, and that's because she just flattened Kamala.
Yeah, I mean, these big tech companies, these like the Davos people, rich people at Davos.
Yep.
All these people in these big companies, they don't want to compete. They continue to give out this crappy product, this disappointment year after year, but people keep going back because they have a monopoly on everything.
Yep.
And they take out the little guy. They do not want to compete because if they competed in a real free market, they'd get squashed.
Well, and so that comes to a very good point. What's better for bigger companies? Is it better to compete against one person or hundreds of companies? Better to compete against one person when you can sit there and price gouge. You can align your pricing.
Oh, they work.
Yeah, they work together all the time.
Yeah.
So if they're able to do that, think about it. Like Xbox, so Sony and Microsoft. Oh my gosh, in the gaming market, and maybe even Nintendo. Those are your like big three. You don't really have any other kind of consoles or anything of that nature, right? Then you go to cell phones, Androids, Googles, iPhones. Those are your big three. You have like limited competition, and granted, they're not monopolies because some of the market is taken up by these small guys like Cricket Mobile, or Cricket. Like when you look at who you get your actual services through, Verizon, what is it, AT&T now,
and T-Mobile.
Those are your big three. But then you got like Cricket Mobile or Mint Mobile, these small ones, right, that have somewhat of the market. But then you have these big three. What's easier for them? To sit there and work with each other and to price gouge and to do what they can amongst each other, or to be like, you know what, we're not going to talk at all. We're going to be completely open and competitive with each other. Now, they can't do that, like you just said. Some people are going to get squashed. So it's
they
really
don't want to
interesting.
compete.
They don't want to. They want to keep working together to keep their money. That's more opinionated. But when you go back and you look at the facts and you look at the big players in the market, we're not distruthful there. I mean, those are your biggest players, and it typically sticks anywhere between 3 to 4 companies. So look at it like that. Well, that's all I got for tonight, Stuart. What about you?
All I got, man.
Feeling good? Cool.
Yeah.
Well, it was a fantastic episode. 110. We're just plugging away here, chugging away. Week after week, covering things every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Wendy, thank you so much for coming in and participating with us. We really enjoyed you coming in and having a conversation with us. That was awesome. To everyone who has joined in or watched tonight or will see this episode, thank you all so much. We truly appreciate what you all do to help us push this podcast into further horizons. Again, this is something that we are very passionate about, and we don't just do for us, we do for you all, the people, because we want to make sure that you all get the correct news and the most factual news you possibly can without these biased opinions on the side. Now, again, we tell you when our things are opinionated, but we also relay the information of straight facts out there to you without any kind of bias. So we want you all to be aware of what's happening in this world and let you come up with decisions on your own, because we believe that you all, the people, are able to make critical thought-like processes out there for yourselves, for your friends, for your family, and to have those discussions to figure out what's right and wrong. So with that being said, this was the 110th episode of the Fact Is Podcast. Thank you all so much for coming by. We ask that you all follow, share, like every single one of our social medias. We're on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Rumble, the Royal Rumble, TikTok, Twitch, you name it. We're just about everywhere. So please come and find us on all these platforms. Make sure you follow and share on all these platforms as well. That greatly helps us in our journey of being able to expand. Not to mention, we've also opened up a Patreon. You can now subscribe to us for $5 a month. And get some really cool benefits there. We are working on trying to become with a tier system, be able to offer better content, more content for you all, to see how we can, again, kind of start getting into the marketplace and actually start to be able to gain your all's trust to start building an influence across the market, because we need to fight big tech companies and become something like Breaking Points with Crystal and Sagar. That would be a beautiful, beautiful vision for what we get to do here today. So with that being said, Stu, I think I'm all good. Wrapping up the 110th episode of the Fact Is Podcast. We were your host, Nave Moses.
And Stu Mowbray.
And we really appreciate you all coming by, and we look forward to seeing you all for the 111th episode next week, Wednesday, 8 p.m. See you all then.